The valet stand outside the Asher Hotel smelled of cold rain and gasoline, and the keys in the man's hand were the cheap kind. A thin steel ring crowded with a grocery rewards tag, a dulled house key, a small enamel charm shaped like a sailboat. He had picked them up off the wet curb, where they had fallen between a black sedan and the gutter, and he was holding them out the way a person holds something he has no claim to. A woman's voice cut across the portico before he reached the desk. "Don't touch those, please. Those aren't yours." The voice belonged to Vivian Asher, Mott, CEO of Asher Hospitality Group, and she said it the way she said everything in her own lobby, evenly, with the small smile she used in photographs. "We have lost found for that. The staff entrance is around the side." She glanced at his work jacket, at the grease shadow along his cuff, at the daughter holding his other hand, and her smile tightened by a single degree. "Sweetheart, we don't need help." He did not know that man she did not yet realize was Daniel Reyes, once the lead horological restorer for the Geneva Atelier that had rebuilt 3 pieces in her late father's collection. She did not know the small enamel sailboat on her own keyring had been hand-painted by his dead wife. Stay with this one all the way through. Every detail is here for a reason. He set the keys on the marble counter without answering, took his daughter's hand, and walked back out into the rain. His name was Daniel Reyes, and for 6 years he had run a one-man repair shop on Linden Street, 2 blocks east of the bus depot, behind a hand-painted sign that read only Reyes Repairs, watches, clocks, small instruments. He kept the hours short. He picked his daughter Mira up from school at 3. The shop smelled of oil and old brass, and the front window held 3 things only: a wooden tray of loaner, watches for customers waiting on parts, a brass marine chronometer he was slowly bringing back to life, and a framed photograph of a woman with dark hair laughing at the camera, taken the summer before she died. Claire had been a miniaturist painter. She had worked in enamel and watercolor, the kind of patience that turned an afternoon into a single brushstroke. The cancer had taken 11 months. In the last of those months, Daniel had flown home from Geneva for the 3rd time, looked at his 3-year-old daughter sitting on a hospital chair too big for her, and understood that he was finished with the life that put him on airplanes. He had not announced it. He did not advertise the resignation. He simply did not return the next contract, and the atelier sent him a letter that he kept in a drawer and did not frame. Mira was 7 now. She carried everywhere a small stuffed otter named Pim, with one ear sewn back on by her father in slightly mismatched thread. She was the kind of child who watched a room before she entered it. She liked the bench at the back of the shop, the one near the heater, where she did her homework on a folding table and read aloud from books about whales and migration patterns and the inner ears of small mammals. She knew her father fixed things. She did not yet know what he had fixed, or for whom. The shop's customers were the neighborhood, a retired bus driver with a Timex from his wedding day, a baker whose grandfather's pocket watch had been dropped in fluff for 40 years, a high school boy whose first watch had stopped on the day his grandmother died, and who could not afford the repair, and to whom Daniel had said only, "Pay me when you can," and had meant it. He charged fairly. He did not have a website. He kept a green ledger and a rotary dial phone that still worked, and a single pegboard above the bench, where every tool hung in a place chosen years ago and never moved since. What the lobby of the Asher Hotel did not know was that the marine chronometer in his window had been built in 1879 by Victor Kohlberg of London, that it had survived 2 transatlantic crossings and a fire in Halifax, and that Daniel had been quietly restoring it for the estate of a private collector who had died before the work was finished. The estate had gone to auction. The chronometer had not. It sat in his window because the heir, a quiet man in his 60s, had asked Daniel to keep working until it ran. He was paying by the hour. He was in no hurry. Mira liked to put her ear to the glass case at night before they locked up and listen for the tick that was not yet there. It rained that whole first week of October, the steady rain that turned the gutters along Linden Street into small rivers. And Daniel walked Mira home each afternoon under a black umbrella that had belonged to Claire. He had not replaced it. The handle was wood and worn smooth. It was the kind of object that does its work without being noticed, which was, he had come to think, the highest thing an object could do. On the Friday of that week, 3 days after the lobby, Vivian Ashermont walked into Reyes Repairs at 4 in the afternoon. She was alone. She wore a camel coat and a watch on her left wrist that he recognized in the first 2 seconds. A vintage Patek Philippe Calatrava, 1953. His hands knew the case shape before his eyes confirmed it. She did not recognize him at first. The light in the shop was different from the light in her lobby. She set a small velvet pouch on the counter and said, "I was told you might be able to look at this. I was told you were inexpensive." She said the word, the way a person says a word she means to land. He understood the landing. He did not adjust his face. He opened the pouch. Inside was a lady's wristwatch, gold case, white dial, blued steel hands. No maker's mark visible on the face, but he turned it over and read the engraving on the back without lifting it to the light. It was a 1948 piece from a small Genevan house that had been absorbed into a larger one in 1971. He had handled 4 of them in his career. One he had personally restored. "It was my grandmother's," she said. "My mother wore it. It stopped about a year ago. 3 other places told me it would be cheaper to retire it. I assume you'll say the same." "It can be repaired," he said. She looked at him then, properly, and he watched the small recognition move across her face and then be tucked away. Her training was good. Her smile returned at the same degree it had been in the lobby. How much? He named a number. It was fair. It was less than the 4 other shops would have charged, because he did not need to mark up overhead. He did not have. And because the work was the kind of work he liked. She gave a small laugh, not a loud laugh, a soft one, the kind people use when they want a price to sound foolish without saying it is foolish. "For that piece of junk," she said, "I could buy a new one for that. I could buy 3. She glanced past him at the chronometer in the window, at the tray of Lohner Timexes, at Mira, at the back table coloring with a green marker. "You're certainly proud of your little operation here. Honestly, I expected something more. I was told Daniel Reyes was somebody." So she had asked. She had asked someone, somewhere, between Tuesday's lobby and Friday's counter. And the someone had given her a name, and the name had not yet connected in her memory to the man holding her grandmother's watch. He registered this and set it aside. "It isn't junk," he said. It is a 1948 Vacheron adjacent caliber, in-house, 21 joules, and the balance staff is broken. I can make the staff. The crystal needs replacing. The dial is original and should not be touched. The work will take about 11 weeks because I had other pieces ahead of yours. 11 weeks, she said. Yes, for a watch. Yes, she tilted her head. The smile was still there. You know who I am. Yes, and you're still going to make me wait 11 weeks. Yes. There was a pause then, the kind of pause that happens when a person used to a particular outcome encounters a person not arranging for that outcome. Mira looked up from the back table. She did not say anything. She watched. Vivian Asher Mott picked up the watch, slid it back into the velvet pouch, and put the pouch in her coat pocket. I'll think about it, she said. Honestly, I might be better off donating it. It really isn't worth the trouble. She glanced once more at the chronometer in the window, at the way the brass caught the afternoon. And Daniel saw her almost ask. She did not ask. She nodded at him the way a person nods at staff and walked back out into the rain. The bell above the door rang once. Mira waited until it had stopped ringing. Daddy, she said. She didn't even look at it. No, she didn't look at it for very long. No, sweetheart. She didn't. Mira considered this with the seriousness she brought to most things. Then she said, people miss a lot of things when they don't look long enough. He did not answer her. He folded the velvet pouch's twin, the one he kept under the counter for his own pieces, and put it back in the drawer. He locked the case. He turned the small enamel sign on the door from open to closed. She came back the following Tuesday. She brought the watch. She set it on the counter without a pouch this time. And she said, 11 weeks is fine. And she did not look at him when she said it. And he understood that something in the previous 4 days had told her something she had not wanted to be told. He did not ask what. He wrote out a ticket in his green ledger, tore the carbon, and gave her the bottom copy. She took it with 2 fingers. Mr. Reyes, she said. Yes. My assistant says you used to work in Geneva. I did. For how long? 12 years. She nodded. The smile was thinner now, the way a smile thins when its owner is calculating in a register. She did not plan to use that morning. She left without saying anything else. The bell rang. Mira at the Babak did not look up. Daniel placed the watch in the small steel tray on the bench where new work waited. He wrote the date on the tag. He wrote the owner's name in block letters. He set Pim, who Mira had left near the bench, back on the folding table where she would find him in the morning. Then he turned off the front lamp and left the small lamp over the bench burning, the way he always did, because the work liked a steady light. He started on the watch the next morning at 7. He worked the way he had been taught to work, which was slowly and in writing. Day 1, he photographed the piece from 6 angles and wrote a one-page condition report in pencil. Day 2, he removed the movement from the case, cleaned the case in a separate tray, and began the disassembly. He laid each part on a white tray in the order it came out, the way Henri had taught him in the 3rd week of his apprenticeship, the year Daniel was 22 and could not yet hold a balance wheel without sweating. Henri had said, if you cannot put it back the way it came apart, you do not deserve to take it apart. Daniel had not forgotten. Day 3, he confirmed the broken balance staff and began the calculations to turn a new one on the lathe. The staff was 0. 7 millimeters at its narrowest. He had a piece of stock from a Swiss supplier in a small wooden drawer marked, in his own handwriting, Staff Stock Fine. He cut a length. He marked his dimensions on a sheet of graph paper. On day 4, his friend Marco came by the shop unannounced. Marco Bellini ran a small antique shop 2 streets over, and had once 15 years ago been a watchmaker himself before his eyes had stopped cooperating with the loop. He was the kind of friend who showed up without calling, took off his coat without asking, made coffee on the small hot plate behind the counter, and sat down at the second bench without needing to be told. He had heard somehow that the watch had come in. He did not say how. "You need a hand?" he said. "On the dial," Daniel said. "The minute track. I'd rather 2 sets of eyes." Marco nodded. He did not ask about the fee. There was no fee. He poured a second cup and sat down. Mira arrived at 3:15, set Pim on the folding table, and got out her math homework. She watched the 2 men work for a long minute before she opened her book. Then she said, to nobody in particular, "Pim says hello to Mr. Marco." "Tell Pim I said hello back," Marco said, without looking up. She wrote a row of subtraction problems. She hummed a small song under her breath, the one Claire used to sing while she painted. And Daniel at the lathe did not lift his head, but he heard it, and his hand on the work did not change its rhythm, which was how he honored it. Day 5, he turned the new staff. It took 11 hours over 2 sittings. He broke the first one at hour 4. He did not curse. He set the broken piece on a small square of tissue, labeled it Failed Attempt 1, and started again because Henri had also said the failures are part of the file. By the end of day 5, the new staff sat on the white tray, finished, and Marco, who had stayed late, looked at it under the loupe and said only, "Clean." Daniel said, "Thank you." Marco said, "I didn't do anything." Daniel said, "You sat with it." Marco nodded and put on his coat. Day 6 was a Saturday. The shop was closed. Daniel and Mira walked to the river and fed bread to the ducks, and she asked him, on the way home, whether the watch belonged to the lady from the lobby, and he said yes, and she thought about that for a block. And then she said, "Are you going to fix it nicely anyway?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because the watch didn't do anything wrong." She held his hand for the rest of the walk and did not let go even when the rain started again. The watch came back to life on day 43, not with ceremony, not with the small drama Daniel had sometimes seen in other shops, where a finished piece was held up to the light and turned for the customer's benefit. It came back the way most things come back, under careful hands, quietly in the middle of an ordinary morning, with Marco sitting at the second bench reading a parts catalog and Mira not yet in from school, and the rain, which had returned in the second week of November, tapping its slow coat against the front window. The movement had been cleaned, reassembled, regulated. The new balance staff sat in its pivots with the kind of fit that cannot be described to someone who has not felt it. The way a thing settles when its tolerances are correct, not forced, not approximate, but exact in the way that only a turned part can be exact. Daniel had regulated the rate over 6 days on the timing machine, adjusting the hairspring's effective length by fractions he measured in seconds per day and recorded in pencil in the green ledger. On day 41, the rate had been plus 4 seconds in 24 hours. On day 42, plus 1. On day 43 At 9:17 in the morning, it was 0. He set the movement down on the white tray. He did not say anything. He wrote the number in the ledger and drew a small horizontal line beneath it the way Henri had taught him to mark a finished regulation. The line meant, "This is done, and it is correct." Marco not looked up from the catalog. He could read a room without his loupe. 0? He said. 0, Daniel said. Marco turned a page in the catalog, found nothing in it, and closed it. Good, he said. He did not say anything else. There was nothing else to say. The work was what it was, and what it was right. Daniel cased the movement that afternoon, fitted the new crystal, and set the hands. The original dial, which he had not touched beyond a careful cleaning with a dry brush and a breath of air from the small bellows, showed its age in the way good things show their age, not as damage but as a record. The minute track was intact. The blued steel hands moved across it without catching. He wound the crown 12 turns and set the watch in the timing cradle for a final overnight check. On day 44, the rate was 0 again. He wrote the second line. He cleaned the outside of the case with a soft cloth, polishing only the flat surfaces and leaving the brush sides as they were, because the brushing was original, and he did not have the right to change it. He placed the watch in a small hinge box lined with velvet, the kind he kept for pieces that had earned the extra care, and he set the box on the shelf above the bench where finished work waited. He called the number on the ledger ticket that evening. He reached a woman who said she would pass the message along. He did not leave details. He said only that the piece was ready and that she could collect it at her convenience. She came on a Thursday. Not alone this time. She brought a woman Daniel did not recognize, young, with the precise posture of someone trained to observe, a tablet in her hand and a name badge that read Asher Hospitality Group in small sans serif type. The young woman's name was Petra, and she had been the one, Daniel would later understand, who had assembled the file, who had found the Geneva contract, who had located the Atelier's records and the 3 pieces in the late Arthur Asher's collection, each one bearing a small stamp notation in the caseback, DR Restoration with a year. Petra had known who Daniel Reyes was before her employer had finished asking the question. She had said nothing at the time. She had waited. Vivian Asher-Mott came to the counter in a different coat, gray this time, and she set her hands flat on the glass the way a person does when she is trying to be still. She looked at the box before Daniel opened it. She looked at it the way she had not looked at the watch on her first visit or her second. She was looking long enough now. He opened the box. He set it on the counter and stepped back. She picked up the watch. She turned it over. She read the engraving on the back, the engraving she had read 100 times before, her grandmother's name and a date in 1948. And then she looked at the movement side, and she was quiet for a long time. Petra, beside her, said nothing. She had already seen the condition report Daniel had emailed 3 days prior, a 4-page document with photographs and measurements and a materials log, the kind of documentation that Atelier clients received as a matter of course, and that most small-town repair shops did not produce. Petra had read it twice. She had forwarded it to a horological consultant she knew in Zurich, a retired appraiser named Gerhard Wendt, who had authenticated pieces for 3 major auction houses. Wendt had replied within a day. His reply was 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph described the caliber. The second described the quality of the restoration work, specifically the turned balance staff, which he said was machined to a tolerance he had not seen outside of a Swiss atelier in the last 20 years. The third paragraph asked who had done the work. Petra had printed the email. She had it in her bag. She did not take it out. She did not need to. Vivian Ashermott put the watch on her wrist. She fastened the clasp. She held her arm out and looked at it the way her mother had looked at it, and her grandmother before that, and the watch ran, and was correct, and was itself again. There was a silence then, not an ordinary silence. The kind that comes after something has been restored to its proper place in the world. And everyone in the room knows it, and no one has the right words yet, and no one tries to find them. I said something, Vivian said. When I came in the first time, I said it was junk. You did, Daniel said. It wasn't. She was not looking at him. She was looking at the watch. It was never junk. I just didn't look at it long enough. He did not answer. He closed the empty hinge box and set it under the counter. She looked up then, and her voice had changed, not softened exactly, but shifted the way a key changes when it finds the right lock. Less performance, more person. I have a collection, she said. My father's pieces, 12 watches, 2 marine chronometers, a ship's clock. They've been in storage for 3 years because I haven't found anyone I trusted with them. She paused. She set her hands flat on the counter again. I would like you to assess them. I would pay fairly whatever your rate is, and I would not rush you. He looked at her for a moment. He did not look away, and he did not look down, but he did not answer immediately either, and the silence was not uncomfortable. It was simply his, and he used it. I'll think about it, he said. It was the same phrase she had used 4 weeks ago, with the velvet pouch in her coat pocket. She heard it. Her eyes moved just slightly, and then she nodded once, the way a person nods when a point has been made that does not need underlining. She paid the ticket. She left. The bell above the door rang once, and then the shop was quiet again. Mira came in at 3:15 with her backpack and Pym and a drawing she had made at school of what she said was a whale, though it also looked, Daniel thought, somewhat like a very blue cloud. She put Pym on the folding table and climbed onto the bench stool and looked at the shelf where the finished pieces waited. Is the lady's watch gone? She said. Yes. Did she like it? I think so. Mira considered this. She arranged Pym against the wall so he faced the bench, which was how she always arranged him, so he could watch the work. Then she opened her backpack and got out her reading book. Good, she said. It deserved to be liked. He turned back to the bench. The chronometer was there. The Kohlberg, still waiting, its movement open and patient, the way old things are patient when they have survived enough. He picked up the loop. He sat down. The lamp above the bench made a clean yellow circle on the white tray, and inside it everything was visible, and everything that needed doing was clear. He did not think about the collection and storage or the assessment or what he would eventually decide. He thought about the work in front of him, which was the only work that mattered right now. And he began. That evening, after Mira had fallen asleep with Pym tucked under her arm and the whale cloud drawing pinned above her bed, Daniel locked the shop and walked home the 2 blocks along Linden Street under Claire's umbrella. The rain had eased to something barely there, more mist than rain, the kind that doesn't bother announcing itself. The window above his kitchen table was lit from inside. The lamp he always left on, its rectangle of light, falling yellow across the wet sidewalk. He stopped for a moment and looked at it. Just that. A lit window in the dark, ordinary, and specific, the kind of thing a person misses when they do not look long enough. He had learned from years of work at a bench that value does not announce itself. It waits. It waits in a broken staff, in a stopped hand, in a case carried into a shop by someone who has not yet learned to look. The looking is the skill. The patience is the tool. And the work done quietly and correctly and completely is its own answer. He went inside. He hung up the umbrella. He turned off the kitchen light and went to bed.